Well, listeners, there is a brand new film out now on streaming platforms that we know that you are going to absolutely love. It is called I Am Rage, and it is directed by director David Ryan Keith, who was also one of the co-writers of the film as well. So to find out a little bit more about this fantastic film, we thought we would actually get David on the phone right now. Welcome to the program, mate.
How are you?
I am going really well. Now, David, I Am Rage, I sat down and watched it and loved it. Tell us a little bit
Oh,
about this film and where it first came from.
it was well. I'll get this straight off the bat. It's a kind of boring story. It came off. We had another movie before COVID, and when that movie got cancelled, we were kind of in limbo for a couple of years, and then I Am Rage was kind of presented to us. So it was just something I had to kind of jump all over, to keep us going through the dark period of COVID, I guess.
What was your first thoughts when you first read the idea behind the film, though?
It was actually a completely different movie. It was written by someone else, and when I agreed to do it, I kind of came in and essentially rewrote the film, I guess. And yeah, it's just one of those. Yeah, it was just that the whole movie was a bit of a blur, to be honest. From getting the green light to shooting the movie was within only like a month, so it was like a really, really quick movie turnaround.
So tell us a little bit, what was the original screenplay like compared to what we see today? What kind of things did you bring to it when you sat down for that rewrite?
Well, I hope you're sitting down for this one. So the original idea was going to be based around a native Indian girl that had the power to turn into a bear, and her shadow would kill people. So obviously, yeah, I wasn't really wanting to make that movie. I mean,
Yeah.
it was pretty ridiculous. So I had a bit of time in between. I do a lot of post-production on other people's films, so I had some time to completely rework the script and kind of change the narrative and the complete storyline for I Am Rage, I guess. Which, looking back, for my career, I guess, I'm glad I didn't make the one about a bear.
Yeah. So how did you come up? How did you come up with the ideas that we see in the film now from that?
Yeah, well, there's quite this at the time when I was writing the script for this movie. Adrenochrome was loosely based on a conspiracy theory, and I kind of tied that into the movie to try and give it some kind of original twist on you could argue, a tired format. And now I see that there's this big movie coming out called The Sound of Freedom, and it mentions adrenochrome, and now people are wondering, oh, is it actually real? So we find ourselves in this kind of awkward situation where we've made a movie with this controversial, idea that's coming out at the same time it's all kind of kicking off in the US. So it's going to be an interesting month once the movie actually comes out.
Yeah, you mentioned you only had a month to work on this before you had to start to shoot. Did you feel the stress of that at all?
Honestly, it's just the way indie films get made. I think once the producers kind of get a sniff of money, they force the movies into production as quick as they can, because the people they invest can take that money away just as quick to put it into another project they might think's better, if you know what I mean. So it's always like a crazed turnaround just to get the movie into production to secure the actual funding.
So once you had that screenplay ready to go, how did you go about casting? Did you have people in mind as you were writing that screenplay?
Originally, it was going to be a bigger movie with a bigger budget, but because of COVID, I think the producers and the investors were like a bit more, what's the right word? I'm not sure what the word would be. They weren't sure if they should be investing money in known names. So our original cast, yeah, we had some known horror names, action names. And then because the turnaround was so quick, and we shot this in Scotland in the UK, at the end of the day, they just let us cast UK actors, to get the movie moving as fast as possible, which I think in hindsight probably worked out for the best.
Definitely, and it is such a great cast that you've been able to put together as well. Tell us a little bit about how you went about finding those cast members once you knew that you could work with a UK cast, and what made you go with the people that you went with.
Well, I wanted to go down the martial arts. When you do an independent film and they want it to be an action movie, you're really quite limited what you can actually put on screen once you've actually paid for the production. So I decided to go down the route of martial arts, and then the struggle was to be able to find lead actresses that one could act, but two do martial arts for the movie. So at the time I thought, oh, this will be quite easy to do, but it turns out there's not many people in the UK that can do both convincingly enough to be even in a small independent film.
So how does that change the kind of audition process that you do? Like, do you have to bring them in and first of all make sure that they're fine for the character, but then also test out their martial arts skills?
It actually makes it a lot easier because there's not that many people that can do both. Yeah. So your options are quite limited. So it's just a case of doing the usual casting, looking at their reels, that kind of thing. And then, again, because the movie was such a blur, we managed to put aside 6 days before we actually shot the movie so they could work with the stunt coordinator, which really, like normally in my other movies I do, we never get that kind of extra money to put, a bit of rehearsal in place. So it was all just cross your fingers kind of thing. I knew they could act, but I was just like praying that they could follow through on the action martial arts side.
Yeah. So what was your thoughts when Hannah first came into the picture to play Erin? Was she someone that really stood out to you and you cast her straight away?
Yeah, it was just pure luck. I saw some of her reels just by chance, just while we were initially casting. And obviously, as soon as I could see that she was a great actress, and then as a bonus, she could do martial arts. So it was a no-brainer for us to try and snap her up and convince her to do this movie, because she's in this movie a lot. She does a lot of fighting. And we were filming in Scotland in the winter, so it was going to be a pretty tough experience for her. But yeah, it's just one of those weird things. I remember them in the first 6 days when they worked with the stunt coordinator, and when I saw what those guys were coming up with, I was like, okay, we're good. I just need to make the movie now.
So the shoot itself, you mentioned COVID there. You also mentioned about shooting in Scotland in the middle of winter. Were there still COVID restrictions around at that time when you were shooting?
The COVID restrictions were just easing off, but we were still like in these weird kind of bubbles. And luckily for us, we were filming it was the west of Scotland. It's quite remote, so we were quite removed from everyone, basically. I mean, you went a little stir crazy because all you had to do was shoot the movie. But yeah, I mean, the producers wanted to shoot in Scotland in winter, and I told them that they were crazy, and we all found out the hard way that you should never shoot a movie in Scotland in winter.
Yeah. What were some of the things that you had to face? Like, I know here in Australia we talk about how cold our winters are, but I'm sure they're nowhere near as cold as the Scottish winters. What kind of things did you have to face while filming this film?
Well, Scotland's quite famous for having like multiple seasons in one day.
Yeah.
And unluckily for us, we would have within the space of say 3 hours snow, hail, wind, rain, sunshine, and this would just repeat for like 18 days. So I mean, it got to the point we had crew members out raking the snow off the forest floor. I mean, to be honest, it was a horrible experience making the movie. I knew it was coming as soon as they said they wanted to shoot in winter.
Yep.
But in a weird way, it's amazing we even finished the movie. It was that bad. And the poor cast were out in like little tank tops, to tick all the boxes for these kind of action movies. And yeah, I think everyone was happy by the time the film finished. Let's put it that way.
On top of all of that, you're shooting action sequences and martial arts in a very, very tight time frame for the shoot as well. How did you find that part of it?
Well, you know what? It's crazy. They give you like 18 days. Well, in my experience, I only get 18 days to make this movie, regardless if it's a horror or action film. So it's such an intense. You're working 10, 12 hours today, and luckily we invested heavily in a professional stunt coordinator from Los Angeles, and he really saved our ass, if I can say that. And
yeah,
all the actors were so well trained, ready to go for all these big fight scenes, and it was just really, it's just a whirlwind of filming. You don't really have time to really come up and look about and kind of comprehend what you've even done the last days. I remember there was a couple of days where I was convinced I hadn't filmed scenes when in fact I'd already filmed them. It just becomes this intense. We have 18 days. You've got to film all this stuff. Go, 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 go. Yeah, it's crazy.
And how do you feel now that the film's coming out? Are you nervous, or are you excited that people are finally going to get a chance to watch it?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I mean, because of the actor strikes, they're like kind of wheeling out the directors now to do promotional, and I'm like kind of like a rabbit in the headlights. I haven't actually seen any reviews for the movie, so I'm like, do people even like this movie, or have I just made like the worst movie ever? So I'm kind of, I'm curious now for the film to finally come out and hit the intended audience.
And we should say a big thank you to David as well, because David did step in at the last moment to do this interview. And I guess, does that make you even more nervous that this is happening with the strike at the moment, with the film coming out? Was there any talk of pushing the film's release date back? Because we're hearing that happen a lot here in Australia at the moment with local productions.
I'm not sure. I think the way the distributor in that are approaching it, they think it's a good... they're not saying the strikes are good, but they're like, well, the content's eventually going to start kind of running out. So now this is kind of good for this movie. We're a small independent film, so maybe we'll get a bit of a push, which I know it sounds terrible as they're all striking. And obviously then the downside is the people that would never ever talk like me, try to promote movies, are having to step forward and try and do all these interviews without destroying the film promotion.
Well, David, you've done a great job, not only with this interview, but with the film as well. So to finish off the interview, what would you like to say to people out there who are about to sit down and watch I Am Rage?
I think if you like old school action movies, fun popcorn films where you can switch your brain off for 90 minutes and watch a strong female cast kick the living hell out of each other, this is definitely the film for you.